I was a weirdo who knew I wanted to be in coffee very, very early. So when you guys offered me a management position, I was like, okay, real life experience, learning what it is that I want to do, or go to college and understand the theory behind it.
Yeah, you can go spend $100,000 on a business degree, or you can go make $100,000 worth of mistakes.
Welcome to Make Haste Slowly. Today we got Patrick Pierce, which is he's a really good friend of ours. He and I kind of grew up in the coffee industry together, and I've had many adventures in coffee and learning and kind of learning together. So I'll let kind of Patrick tell you a little bit about himself, but he's man, I guess it's 2004 is when you and I met, and
Yep.
went to the first barista jam, and it was just you, me, and John Johnson who could do latte art, and from there it's kind of
It's blossomed.
it's blossomed. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Wow.
So
mean,
tell
thanks
us
for
like
having
what's
me.
kind of been your journey? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so started right out of high school when I was 18 and just kind of fell into it. And I was very fortunate enough to the first shop I worked at, Cuvée was the roaster with Mike McKim there. And I want to say it was Mike McKim and Cuvées only account in Austin. So he was
Mm.
driving up the coffee regularly and coming up for trainings. And so, yeah, we had a La Marzocco, a little Linea with the Swift, and him and the crew at the gelato shop that I worked at were making great coffee. I mean, unbeknownst to me at the time, it was one of the best like coffee spots in Austin, if not
Hmm.
Texas. So it was really cool to see Mike McKim come in, and everybody kind of knows who he is at this point, but back then he was just part-time coffee roaster, part-time equipment salesman, doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I went and I cupped coffees with him in December of 2004 and kind of had my
Hmm.
aha moment with a natural Ethiopian Harar.
Hmm.
And I thought he was punking me, and he put like blueberry syrup in the
Yes.
cup. And
Uh-huh.
that's kind of and then whenever I was like, oh, whoa, there's like a lot more to this than just like, what
Hmm.
your grandparents drink when you were growing up. So yeah, so from there it just kind of like really snowballed for me. So I
Hmm.
started, I mean, I met you shortly thereafter at, like you said, the barista jam in College Station. And
Hmm.
I mean, there was some studs there. Dan Streetman was putting it
Oh
on.
yeah. Uh-huh.
Dan has had a
Yes.
prolific career in coffee, and then yeah, that's when I met you over at JP's, and I think shortly thereafter is when you told me that you were working on Medici,
Mm.
and I was like, hey, put me in, coach, let me in. Um, yeah, just because clearly knew how passionate you were and that you were trying to take the lessons that you had learned at JP's and kind of distill that into like a great coffee shop and a great
Mm.
community. So yeah, we worked. I started at Medici October 2006,
Yep.
and worked
Mhm.
there for few years, 4 or 5 years. Went and worked for
Hmm.
a startup for a couple years. Came back. He couldn't keep me away. Came back for a couple more years in 2013 to 2015, and then I
Hmm.
started Fleet right after that,
Wow.
Yeah.
and been doing that for yeah 8.5 years now.
Yeah. That's
That was a
wild.
beautifully concise chronology. I appreciate
Hmm.
Yeah, just
appreciate
bing
that
bong boom. Yeah,
succinctness.
yeah.
I'm going to circle all the way back though. So Teo, was that the first place you worked? Did you work at Teo because of the coffee, or was that just like you happened to get a job
No,
there?
yeah. I
Okay.
had friends that worked there, and yeah, I was like, yeah, sure, give me a job. So I when I moved to Austin, I mean, I moved right after I graduated high school. It was like 3 days later. I was like, see ya, wanted to get out of rural Texas and come to Austin. And so I lived here for about a month before I got a job. And so my
Mm.
friends worked at this place, and they talked, fairly positively about it, and so they got me a job there. And I mean, I had never, and the only coffee I'd really consumed prior to that was frappuccinos from Starbucks, and
Yeah.
like coffee flavored desserts that my mom would have, but we did not have coffee in our household growing up. So, yeah, but I mean, for me, it's always like taking ownership of whatever I'm doing. So I dove straight in, like forced myself to drink espresso, um, tried to figure out latte art, like try and figure out what it is that somebody who's a master at this, kind of like what are they looking for and what do they do? And I mean, we had no idea what we were doing, like knowing what we know now, but
Yeah.
it was I was still very fortunate that to be in a space that had like great equipment and great coffee going into it
Mm.
and allowed me
Yeah.
to start at such a high level. Because I think a lot of
Hmm.
people, Starbucks has paved the way for most people to go get into
Yep.
specialty coffee.
Yep.
And I was one of the few people who didn't go that route. And I mean, I kind of wish I had worked at Starbucks because they
Really?
do such a good job of instilling like
Mm.
customer service and good habits and reinforcing those.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that I got my start at Teo with such good coffee and supportive people.
Yeah. I think that's something interesting just during that period of time is like I think you and I both kind of lucked into two of the shops that were kind of starting that sort of specialty coffee movement. Teo and JP's really had that sort of beginning stages of of that specialty coffee movement. Even though we would laugh at like kind of what we do now, or what we did back then versus but at the time it was kind of like there was a lot of exploration and kind of learning about what coffee is and what it can be and extraction and that kind of stuff, which is kind of wild.
Oh yeah, nobody even said that word back then, extraction.
Oh no.
Yeah, yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah. It was. I mean, everything. Whenever I distinctly remember when I was getting trained how to steam. They're like, yeah, when it sounds like an airplane taking off, is like that's when you know you're stretched it too much or you like it's too hot. But like I'm like, okay, an airplane taking off. Like, let me try. I mean, like the way in which you were taught, nobody temped really milks, nobody weighed anything. It was
Mm,
all like volumetric, like, okay, when you have 2 ounces of espresso, you turn off the little button. Well, it's like 2 ounces of espresso doesn't mean anything because it could be all crema and there'd be
mm,
like very little espresso. It could be really fresh coffee. And then when you weigh it, you only captured maybe 10 grams and you wanted 3 or 4 times that. So we were constantly just basically pulling under extracted coffee. Knowing what I know now, we were all pulling under extracted, like kind of tart sour coffee, which I
mhm,
mean, come to learn, yeah, I like tart coffee. And I think that's why, is because
mhm.
my pathway into making great coffee was habitually drinking tart, sour, under extracted coffee. That I kind of developed a palate for it.
Wow. So you think
That's
that
funny.
really set your palate?
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
Huh.
I very rarely worked with anything that was a dark roast. So because again, Cuvée was like medium on the nose, maybe medium dark a little bit. We did use his darker blend. I believe at that time it was called Mezzanotte.
Mhm,
Um,
Mm.
but yeah, I gravitated more towards the fruitier, like lighter coffees, and then knowing how we pulled them, yeah, we were definitely under extracting them, and which isn't, from what I've gathered in all the years of training people, that's a more palatable shot than bitter and over extracted.
mhm,
So it's easier for somebody to enjoy that under extracted, but having it so many times the first 5 years or so in coffee, that's kind of where I started leaning
Wow.
when I would dial in coffees. Even to this day, like whenever I'll like dial in coffees and talk to people, they're like, "Oh, that's a little sour," and I'm like, "I like it." So I have to remember whenever I'm training somebody to maybe factor that in, that I do like a little bit more sour.
I think I remember always fighting with you on that because like you liked it like a little bit under extracted. I liked it a little over extracted on that side of things. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but I am curious, like as far as your journey, by you not going like to high school, or to, you went to high school, by not going to college and kind of going straight into the workforce and kind of where you are now, not only as a business owner, but also like you're running and helping run another company that's opening shops all across the nation. Like, how is that journey? How does that journey kind of map for you as far as like, do you wish you would have gone to college, or has your journey sort of prepared you for where you are today?
So, I mean, I went for a couple years and then I
Mm.
dropped out because you guys offered me a GM job. And so I was like,
Well, it's our fault.
yeah, it was your fault. Exactly, guys. No, so what? I went to ACC and then I
Mhm.
transferred into UT. And that first year at UT, you know, like didn't come from a well-off family, and even though you know, so little brag, I was valedictorian, but my first year of free tuition was ACC because I was
Mm.
coming from such a small town that my parents were very protective, and I heeded their advice of like, hey, going to a big city, maybe start with like a community college and not like a huge university. So I went
Mm.
into ACC, and whenever I transferred to UT, the tuition even back then was a lot. And I
Yep.
mean, that first year, I was like, oh man, I'm gonna be like way in debt by the time I'm through school. And I was a weirdo who knew I wanted to be in coffee
Mm.
very, very early. So when you guys offered me a management position, I was like, okay, real life experience, learning what it is that I want to do, or go to college and understand the theory behind it. So dropped out and pursued the job at Medici and cutting my teeth on that. You know, hindsight being 2020, yes, there is some things that I wish that I'd learned going to like a business school or finishing out my degree around like economics and, you know, P&Ls and how to understand like the finance side of
Mm.
business. And
Mhm.
I had to learn that the hard way. But through, you know, working at Medici and then that startup and all those years of experience, just sponging up as much information as I can
Mm.
that people would have learned had they gone to college, and then they
Right.
would have just been having to then apply it to coffee. I just kind of figured it out the long and more difficult way, but got there nonetheless.
Michael, I just remember, Michael, I feel like someone told you, yeah, you can go spend $100,000 on a business degree, or you can go make $100,000 worth of mistakes. Like in the end, you're gonna pay the price to learn and become
Mhm.
excellent at something, and how you want to do it. My, I
That was
think
Joe Rich.
I think the kinship here is like we kind of like to do it the hard way.
Uh,
Yeah, no, and I mean, I think I've been very lucky to always have smarter people than myself around me to like
mm.
learn from. And I mean, that was huge because whenever I left Medici in 2011 to go work for Brigo, the automated coffee kiosk company, I mean, that was founded by like former CEO of Dell Financial and a wizard with numbers and really smart, like Motorola engineer guy and chief technology officer of Dell as well. So there was a lot of very smart, just wise individuals. And I mean, I was 25 at the time, just the coffee guy coming in, and I just kept my mouth shut in all these meetings and just learned because I
Mm.
got to be privy to meetings of us trying to raise, you know, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, meeting with like well off individuals, angel investors, or wealth funds, and just being around those conversations and around those people gave me a little bit of insight of like, oh, this is how it is done. And
Mm.
these are the things that you need to look for whenever you're structuring your business and you put together pro forma and understanding, you know, cost in relation to income. I mean, then yeah, sure, Google existed, but there wasn't a ton of like great resources that had been distilled
Right.
down that were
Mm.
applicable to coffee or like small business in the way that there are now. There's
Mm.
so many examples and anecdotes out there that you can pull from at this point, and then we really didn't have that.
Yeah, I feel like your experience when you worked there and then came back to Medici, you even brought some really great experience as far as spreadsheets and a lot of the things that we kind of did at Medici too. So I think that was really it did seem like it was a lot of very valuable experience for you and your journey and just learning the business side of things.
I mean, that was a huge part.
Hmm.
Mm.
How did that help you with opening your? But do you feel like do you feel like it? Do you feel like you're pretty prepared when you opened up Fleet as far as starting a business, or was there kind of some new things that you weren't prepared for?
Yeah, I mean, I felt as prepared as I could feel up to that point
Mm,
without just ripping the Band-Aid off and going after it because, yeah, we had raised a good amount of money, and so I felt comfortable like with business plan and pitching people on like my business plan, how we are going to raise money. Totally naive though. I mean, like learned so many lessons. I mean, you have to ask a lot of people for money before you get anything. Like you have to go
mm,
through a lot of repetitions with it, and you have to sell yourself way more than you think you are, unless you're lucky and you just know people. But I really didn't. I mean, we were asking for, you know. $1,000 to $50,000, like whatever, like chunks we could get, and I
Mhm.
mean, total, I think we raised 125,000 or so to open the original fleet, and that came in multiple small chunks. I mean, like 5,000 here, 3 grand here. Our biggest investor came in for 50 grand.
mm,
And we're like, "Whew, yay,"
Yeah.
like we did it. But it was a lot of really small, friends and family, and a lot of iterations of that business plan, and a lot of times like meeting and pitching people that made me feel, that made me like feel like I knew what I was doing. And then when I got in the business, I was like, oh man, I was an idiot when I built that business plan. And like I learned so much about like in theory in a simulation, yeah, the business plan looks great, but then in the
mm,
application, like there's so many flaws that you don't know until you actually get in the space and understand, how expensive it really can get, and all the extra expenses that you don't think about or factor in, or I wasn't at that time.
Right.
Seeing those firsthand was
mm.
was crucial to getting better, when it came to like trying to grow the business. Is that an answer you're looking for?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Can I jump in and ask the question that we always get asked?
Yeah.
Why did you call your business Fleet?
Mm,
So it was kind of twofold. So my dad's business growing up was fleet maintenance service. So my dad
Oh
maintained
wow.
18 wheelers and like oil changed and serviced and washed 18 wheelers. And so he ran that business I mean, up until about 20 years ago. So
Yeah.
so yeah, from the time I was, an infant all the way up to graduating high school. That's what my dad was doing. So it's a little homage to my pops, and then also kind of around. I mean, twofold. Remembers I opened Fleet with a friend of mine, Loren Perkins, and Loren was far more into the like 10,000 viewpoint, like very high up, like the theory around coffee. And I mean, they latched onto it around the ephemerality of coffee and the fleeting moment of coffee.
Mm.
It's far more
mm.
romantic than my reasoning. It was, that, and I mean, but I couldn't put it in the words that Loren put it in at that time.
Mhm,
But it's like what drew me to coffee was when you realize just how much work goes into actually making that cup of coffee and getting it
mm,
Yeah.
to your doorstep, and realizing that so many hands and so many people had to be very intentional to get it in the cup right in front of you, and then you have this fleeting moment of, you know 5 seconds to 5 minutes, maybe, longer if you sip on your coffee to enjoy it, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
And so you
mm.
better enjoy it in that moment and for what it is, because yeah, a lot of work went into that. And so from a barista standpoint and a coffee shop operator, it was trying to honor all the people before us that had done a great job to afford us the luxury to try and brew their coffee, well. And
Mm.
so trying to, distill all that knowledge and all that hard work into a delicious espresso or pour over drip coffee, whatever that is.
Oh,
I,
that
I
is
was
so
kind of curious, like,
eloquently stated. Like anyway, that's so beautiful. Go ahead, Michael.
from an outside perspective, whenever I, look at Fleet, it's like it seems like you guys really from day one were fairly successful as far as, because I think from you building up a
Amazing. Amazing that it was viewed that way. Yeah.
Well, I know, but I think that's the thing is like you had built up a reputation. It's like you were the first South Central barista champion. You've been to nationals a few times.
Mhm.
You were kind of like a pillar in the coffee community, part of starting the Austin Coffee Collective. And you kind of like embedded yourself into the community. So it's like I felt like when you opened up, I felt from our end, it seemed like a lot of people really took notice and y'all were doing fairly well from the beginning. So I know from a business side of things, you're always kind of like, well, that's nice, but
Yeah. No, I mean, it definitely like being in Austin for so long, there was
Mhm,
a lot of regulars and peers in the industry that were excited to see what we were doing. Because, when we opened Fleet, it was, I would say, the most simple menu, like arguably
mhm,
the most elitist menu as well. Like
mhm,
we had like a 10-ounce latte. That was our biggest drink. And we didn't do any 16-ounce stuff. And we had very few flavorings. And it was basically a shop by baristas for baristas. But
mhm,
then so I think that if you're a specialty coffee nerd, yeah, you latched onto it.
mhm,
But as time has shown, that's your smallest demographic. Like true coffee professionals and aficionados, those people are your smallest percentage of customers. It's the casual consumer, it's the latte drinkers. Those are the people that pay the bills. Because
mhm,
if I sold just espressos, that's a hard business to run. That
Mhm.
low of a ticket item and the margins on just an espresso. It's that, 750 oat vanilla latte drinker that is what keeps the lights on. So,
mhm,
we opened, we got a lot of industry peers and friends that were really excited for us. We did fine, sure.
mhm,
But to actually grow it and make it sustainable and make it to where we could employ other people and pay them well, like that took some pivoting and a little bit of stretching of our
mhm,
original business model to get more approachable to all types of consumers
mhm,
and not just the 1% of 1% of coffee drinkers.
mhm. Was that a hard transition, a hard pivot, or was that?
It's happened so slowly.
Mm,
And the thing is with naturally in the course of our business is like turnover. Like, I mean, the single shop that I started with, we only had 5 staff. And then
mm,
the pandemic basically, wiped that out. And then so when we started back up, it was just
Mm.
me and 2 other people. So it's
mm,
like you kind of, because of it being so small and just me behind it at that point, like Loren and I went our separate ways. I bought them out in 2018. So at that
mm,
point, I was running the business by myself. So I kind of had full control of shedding that skin, so to speak, and putting on like a new game plan when the time was right. So it'd be like,
mm,
all right, we got a new staff coming in, like you kind of have like a generational turnover, got some new blood coming in. Okay, now's the time to like let me go ahead and reassess. Or like when we open a new location, let's reassess and maybe make sure we're offering something for most people. Like I'm
mm,
not gonna we just the nature of Fleet and how small it is, we can't offer everything because the entire coffee shop, the original one, is 365 square feet with
uh-huh,
seating, with bathroom. The production area is very small. So we had to
mm,
hedge our bets. And since then, every iteration of Fleet has been really small. So we have to keep it narrow focus, but also meet people halfway and meet the casual consumer halfway. So,
mm,
because again, that's the shifting landscape of Austin too has kind of dictated that we have to be more approachable to all types of drinkers, just by who's moved here, competition coming in. I mean, all good things, but it shifted our model from being just one shop, super high end espresso drinkers to okay, how do we appeal to a broader demographic as more competitions come into Austin, as a different consumer has moved to Austin, and just the landscape changed.
Mm.
Yep.
Well, how does as being a business owner, going from one store to three stores, how has that been for you? Has that kind of been challenging, or has that kind of been kind of a natural progression for you?
Um, it's definitely been challenging. I
Mm.
mean, it's the second location was the trailer at Littlefield,
Hmm.
and that was going from East Austin, mostly service industry folks, to West Austin, a more highbrow customer base, more fluent, different, totally different customer base. Like
Mm.
the if you looked at the reports for drinks ordered, polar opposite. And
Mm.
so that made me kind of take a step back and reflect a little bit more on, like, okay, how do I hire? I have to hire differently for that. Like, I went
Mm.
into it thinking that I could maybe force people into my lane of thinking, when
Mm.
realistically I was like, that's not a bad, that's a horrible business move. If I try and do that, I need to kind of, like, again, meet them halfway. And so it was like,
Mhm.
how do I hire for that as well? Because I was hiring as though I was just copy and pasting Fleet Coffee in East Austin to Fleet Coffee in West Austin. Well,
Mm.
totally different demographics, different vibes. And because of the customers coming in that were different, it's like I can't put the same type of employee that I maybe put on the east side, just because it was like you had a lot of families,
Mm.
a lot of families, and certain service industry people are like, no, deal breaker. Like, I don't want to deal with kids.
Uh-huh.
And we
Ooh.
quickly, like, learned where it's like, okay, we need to find the people who are okay with kids, that they love kids
Mhm.
and they love
Mhm.
families and love, being a part of that type of community. So
Mhm.
getting real intentional with the type of people that we hire to fill that role,
Mm.
to fit in with that community. And, like, that was a big learning lesson for me, going from one to
Mm.
two. And then once I sort of understood that, it got a little bit easier from there, because I was like, man,
Interesting.
I don't think I can do the exact same thing that I did in East Austin
Mm.
and grow it in multiple areas and be successful. Like,
Mm.
just because the Austin's so segmented, and, like, the type of people and the type of demographic, like, if you go by campus near University of Austin, your average consumer is going to be 18 to 22. They very few of them, like, enjoy cappuccinos and things like that. Like, that's where they're having their first experience with, like, specialty
Mhm.
coffee. But most of those people are coming from Starbucks, like, from high school, where they drink, like, frappuccinos or
Mhm.
mochas. And so it's like, okay, being, like, mentally prepared to have to handle those types of customers. And so I had to get just smarter and retool the training program to allow to, like, filter in multiple different types of customers that
Mm.
didn't know fleet. Like, if you knew okay, I don't know what's happening here. Um, if you
Wow.
didn't know fleet, like, before, like, to go to fleet, you had to know about us and you had to seek us
Mm.
out. And then when you expand, it's like you just get the person walking up to you, and being able to filter that person into the experience that they want to have.
Mm.
And maybe there's a little bit of education, and maybe there's a little push and pull, but still, like, being a good customer service professional,
Mm.
and getting them something that they enjoy, maybe our way. But I think a lot of shops there, for a while, it was just like, no, sorry, we don't offer it that way. And it's like,
Mm.
I don't think that that's a good move, unless, if you're trying to grow, if you're trying to be sustainable. I mean, it works in certain cities, sure,
Mm.
but Austin, it's there's still a lot. At that point when we opened, there wasn't a lot of coffee shops in town. I mean, you definitely had, like, your Paticas and your Houndstooths and your Figure
Mhm.
Eights and Flitch, and people who were educating all of Austin
Mhm.
were getting all peppered in there and doing a great job of getting the consumer a little bit more educated. But we still had a lot of work to do. We still have a lot of work to do. And being, I think, in Texas, in a city that so many people have moved to, um, is offering a broad enough menu to appeal to all walks. So that was one of the biggest lessons, the longest winded answer to tell you that was one of the biggest lessons that I had to learn when opening Fleet and expanding Fleet was just not being so narrow focused and narrow minded.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of that stuff just in the coffee industry over the years, because you think about like just how kind of ideal we were when we first started, and all of our aspirations, and then sort of like the real world. I'm talking about sort of the specialty coffee movement in general. We kind of had, which was really great. I think a lot of those ideals kind of drove that like innovation that happened over the last 20 years. But I think you saw a lot of baristas starting to own coffee shops, like all around the U.S. that were participating in the competitions, and then a lot of those ideals started to kind of formulate around like real life like situations. And I feel like it seems like kind of like just kind of even here in your journey too, like that's kind of how I feel like our coffee industry is kind of came to be, is that sort of like idealistic and then realistic, and how can we actually make this sustainable and move it into the future? Because you were part of that. You're part of the whole, the baristas from all over the nation competing and hearing ideas. Was that did that inspiration or did that kind of like community, like how did that kind of like drive you as far as your understanding or our love of coffee?
I mean, it made me into a better barista. It also made me understand, like, when I would go to the competitions, the thing that the like crowd was there for is they wanted to try the SIG drinks. Like, it was always like, yeah, sure, they want to, I mean, because you have like coworkers that want to support their coworker who's competing, but when the general public would stumble into that, they'd be like, what the hell am I watching, for starters? But then it was like they hear the barista talk about their SIG drink and they're like, oh man, how do I try that? And it was like, nah, you don't. You have to be a judge. And so whenever it came to opening Fleet, it was like, how do we offer that experience to the general consumer and customers? Because everybody kind of makes good coffee when it comes to like relatively speaking. There's fantastic espresso and drip and lattes and caps and all those things at most shops now in Austin. And I mean, if not like US wide. But then when we opened at the time, it was like, how do we provide people those specialty, like signature drink experiences in like a business way that is sustainable.
Right.
And so, I mean, that's what like the ritual, we started out, it was a James Hoffman inspiration from, I think it was '07 when he won the Worlds. It was taking his donut SIG drink and turning it into a donut cortado with a donut hole. And people loved that. And then we did espresso and tonic with, we opened with lime juice in there. And, we knew St. Frank was in San Francisco had a tonic and espresso, but we were the first people in Austin that I know of that were offering that on the daily, everyday menu. You can come and get these things. Now it's kind of the commonplace, which is amazing because I think that, so many people, so many baristas have come through that, either worked for Fleet, Medici, Houndstooth, again, the same like OG, your Flitches, your Flat Tracks, your all the Fs. I mean, radio, all these places where it's like you just learn and see what your coworkers are doing, and then they go open places and they take those lessons with them. So like now it's all that information has been disseminated across the industry at large to where everybody has SIG drinks, which is awesome. So it's like you can go, I mean, Desnudo, arguably one of the most successful visible companies in Austin. They do a fantastic job of creating and marketing their specialty drinks, their Boggy Berry Latte and their Shoyu Butterscotch Latte, and like those sorts of drinks are what get people into your cafe that maybe never even cared about like learning more about coffee, and then you kind of hook them with that signature drink to then get them to come back or get them to at least like converse about coffee, and maybe they leave with a bag of beans, maybe they leave with a life-changing story about coffee, whatever it is. But so I think that the barista competitions directly impacted me to give those experiences to our customers. And that has just like been applied by, like, they didn't learn it from me. I mean, we were just one little shop, but that like a lot of baristas who have gone through that competition circuit are now at owners at all these other coffee shops and are able
Hmm.
to provide that competition experience to all of their customers, which I mean, that would have been craziness. Think about it. If like 15 years ago, like you're like, yeah, I got this like weird, I mean, remember like how low the bar was with signature
Yeah.
drinks back then? I won a
Totally.
competition with a rosemary chocolate macchiato, which is like
Uh-huh.
laughable now because like it's just so funny to see like the
Yeah.
trends in the coffee world. And like
Hmm.
they got into molecular gastronomy with like Billy Wilson doing spherifying, like, you know, espresso caviar. And I mean, that was in like 2009 or 2010. Like it went way far on the other side. And now it's kind of come back a little bit the other way to be
Hmm.
more approachable and less about, you know, crazy food science. But
Yeah.
yeah, like those barista competitions push the bar and push baristas to figure out how do I take this this, you know, espresso base and turn it into different experiences that all different walks of life can maybe find a segue into specialty coffee through those drinks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and let's not gloss over for our listeners the fact that you are the first ever Southwest Regional Barista Champion.
South Central, South
South
Central.
Central.
Central. Oh, my bad.
Yeah,
Edit.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that was what, 2007. There was
Hmm.
10 or 11 of
That's right.
us that
Hmm.
competed, and up in Dallas, and I mean that again, that was Mike McKim and Cuvée sort of
Hmm.
like brought that to our area, and I
Yeah.
mean I'm pretty sure he like emceed part of it, McKim did, and um, but yeah, that was awesome. I mean the bar remember for all your listeners, I won the South Central. I went to national, and I think I automatically was in the top 25 because of winning the regional. And I think I finished what 23rd or 24th, just because it was like, oh, okay, South is a little behind. I mean, the
Yeah.
West Coast and like the Northeast, they were crushing it. I mean, and even like in the Florida area. I mean, I know Nick Show was on the East Coast at that time, but you
Hmm.
had like all the intelligentsia and the Stumptown and the baristas that came out of those programs and Blue Bottle. I mean, they were like so far ahead of us in the South. And I mean, and again, that was a cool thing about the competitions was, I mean, yeah, I got smoked by all those baristas, but seeing them and being like, oh man, they're like, this is like a lifestyle for them, and like I want to be more like how do I mimic what they're doing and bring that back into Texas. So I mean the gap's closed since then, but whew, there was a big
Hmm.
divide between
Yeah.
myself and all the other baristas, or most of the baristas I would say at that time. But I mean it's still awesome to be a part of. I'm so
Hmm.
glad that I did it. Would I ever do it now? Hell no, I would not do it now. um yeah, like I mean, you really have to dedicate, it's basically a part-time, full-time job outside of your
Hmm.
job to be a barista competitor and do great with it. I mean,
Mm.
you're practicing that routine 100 times if you want to just be like second nature, and that takes a lot of time. And so I have too much respect for the craft now and the competitions that I would never taint that experience by going in there and attempting to do what they do now at the level that they do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
I've never.
kind of curious, like, as far as like, as you've started a business and all your experience, and then you got married, and now you have a kid. Like, how does that kind of change things for you from going from single, being in coffee, opening a business, to now also having and starting a family?
Definitely a lot more pressure.
Hmm.
And I mean, the thing is I don't think the industry's still figuring out how to move people along and up and get them into higher paying jobs and
Mhm.
allow people to grow up in the industry. And I don't think we figured it out still. I mean, yeah,
Hmm.
there's some really interesting things happening in the US, and I mean in some different acquisitions and things like that with maybe larger umbrella companies that enable different benefits and
Mm.
that smaller shops can't offer.
Mhm.
But going through it personally, it's really tough to be a barista or a shop manager and be able to make enough money to afford like a family lifestyle. And like and it's all subjective to where you're living. I mean, we live in Austin, Texas. Austin has grown significantly, and
Mhm.
you know, the entire time I've been here, and I think it's the 11th largest like metroplex area in the US. It's very expensive. And so trying to get, you know, baristas or coffee professionals in the city, amount of money that they can, you know, ever look at like buying a home or anything like that is so difficult. And I mean, it's, it's been really tough for me personally to try and do that. And I mean, even opening a business, it's not like opening a business, you're instantly like rich. It was like there was a
Uh,
lot of debt that I mean, I said it
mhm.
was 125. I mean, it ended up, you know, we had to take a little bit more on when we got going. And I mean, all in all, it was 150 all in to do
Mhm.
fleet. And then we were paying that back over the course of, you know, a number of years. Um, and yeah, when that all gets paid back, which, you know, we're fortunate enough to be profitable to pay down on the debt, and that profit's back on the table, you're not talking six figures. Like,
Mhm.
it's not a lot of money. It was a
Mm.
small
Mhm.
coffee shop, and it was a good salary for just me to
Mhm.
operate it. But the thing is that a lot of people ignore is unless you own the property, you're on borrowed time. And
Mhm.
so it's like it'd be real short-sighted to be like, "This is it. I'm good," because your lease may be 5, maybe 10 years long, maybe 15 or plus if you had a great landlord and a great negotiation. But most shops, you know, 5 to 10 years is what their lease looks like. And so you can't just rest on your laurels, or you're just kind of waiting for to die in that in that
Mhm.
space, and the concept is done. Or then you're like, got to pick up and move somewhere else. So I knew how long the lease I had, and I knew that if I wasn't growing, I was just gonna eventually like I knew the path would stop 10 years
Mhm.
out, and then I'd be
Yeah.
back to square one. So it was like, okay, I kind of have to grow in order to in order to extend fleet beyond the single location, because that one will go away at some point.
Mhm.
Just the nature of business, the nature of real estate in Austin. I'm sure somebody will come and buy that building or buy multiple buildings around there, and it'll get squashed and redeveloped. And
Mhm.
I'm very practical about that because I think, you know, a lot of people in our city, is like it is growing whether you realize it or not or want it to or not. It's changed a lot. And I'm just trying to like, I'm along for the ride and trying to
Mhm.
still find those opportunities. And they're few and far between that they're affordable, and they have the economics in place that allow for profit and success from a small coffee shop operator. But to your point about growing up in the industry and having a family and a kid, it forced me to get out of my comfort zone and keep growing fleet and find other avenues and
Mhm.
source of income in
Mm.
order to provide for my family, in order
Mhm.
to even entertain like saving up and buying a home, or you know, like childcare expenses are expensive, health insurance, all those things.
Mhm.
So those decisions that I made, and I mean, and I waited until my late 30s to have a kid. So I was able to kind of like bust my ass and work all through my 20s and early to mid 30s to kind of set myself up to then have a family in a way that wasn't super stressful. And I
Mhm.
mean, was that like that's just the way it wasn't like I designed that. That's just the way that it kind of
Mhm.
happened. And like, you know,
Mhm.
met my wife at Fleet Coffee, and then, you know, we had our baby girl about a year ago. So it's like, but I'm glad that it happened that way because I was able to learn mistakes without having family there to share
Mhm.
those mistakes with, and maybe, you know, like prevent us from doing certain things. It's
Mhm.
much easier when it's just a single, when it was me, just a single bachelor,
Mhm.
with multiple roommates. So my expenses were really low. So it was easy for me to start a business because I didn't have a lot of expenses.
Mhm.
But yeah, so growing with the family though definitely pushed me to like keep going, keep expanding my business, keep trying to find potential opportunities to like stack profits, stack incomes to get to a livable wage in this city. I don't know how that translates for the employees. I mean, that's one of the hardest things is like is our industry. It feels like going off on a tangent here, but it's like we keep finding ourselves having to hire people in a certain age graphic or age demographic, like or bracket, I should say, like you're 18 to 25. It's a great job for people in college, right out of college, maybe trying to pivot to their full-time career. And I think the industry is still trying to solve for how you get people 25 plus who are interested in starting a family in a position that they're able to make enough to not just like get by, but to hopefully thrive in a city like Austin. And I don't think it's unique to just Austin. I think it's a lot of major cities in the U.S. And I think that especially coffee still hasn't really found a solution for that. And I'm hopeful that they do. And I don't know if it'll be our generation, and it might be the next generation that figures it out. But I'm hoping that happens for all the future coffee professionals.
Well, I'm curious though, is that a coffee specific dynamic? Like, is that also the same dynamic in restaurants or any other service industry thing?
Absolutely.
I mean, I know that like I think Michael and I starting out was like we wanted this profession to grow and to be able to support people having careers in coffee, right? And that is happening, but it's slowly. But I'm like, is this really specific to coffee, or is it just a dynamic across the service industry in general? What do you think?
It is. I mean, yeah, it's service industry in general. It is not just a coffee thing. I think that coffee in general, knowing peers and mentors of mine in the alcohol business and bar industry, and then restaurant industry, is coffee is one of the. I mean, I would argue it's the hardest in that vertical of business to make money and like provide jobs. Like if you run a really successful restaurant or bar, I mean, your margins are so much better. Typically you're paying people especially bartending is the easiest example. So I'll use that, where you're paying somebody, $2.50 an hour, maybe $5 an hour, because the tips are so crazy. Because the norm in the alcohol industry is, even if somebody cracks a beer, you're tipping them $1. If it's a cocktail and it's $15, you're probably drinking multiple drinks and you're tipping 20% or multiple dollars. So it's such so much of it is subsidized by tips, and it's a much larger pool of tips than you see in the coffee industry. And I don't know, I'm optimistic that coffee, that our menu prices will keep going up so we can actually bring more money back into the company to pay people better. But everything kind of has gone up around us. And, you look at the cocktail, I mean, there's places in Austin that 5 years ago, pre-pandemic, they were like $10 for a cocktail, $12. And, those same places now, $16, $18, $20. So you're talking significant increases. If that applied to coffee, we would be in a much better situation. But it is not. And I can't charge $10 for a latte, and people would pay it. And so it's like, yeah, maybe like 10 people would pay it, or like 15 hardcore customers that love me and my staff, but that's not enough to actually pay the bills and make it all work. So I don't really know why the coffee industry still is like even from when Medici opened, I want to say for a double espresso, it was $2.75, maybe $2.50.
$2.50, yeah.
Yeah. And what is it now? $3.75, $4?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's not, you're talking
18 years.
Closing in on 20 years. That's crazy.
Totally.
Yeah.
And the cost and the labor have gone up, have way outpaced the increase in menu prices over that time frame. And that is kind of unique to just coffee. You look
Hmm.
at bar menus, you look at food menus. I mean, you used to be able to get a burger and fries. I'm sounding like an old man now, but you used to be able to get burger and fries for,
Uh-huh.
$10. And now it's like, yeah,
Hmm.
good like getting like a burger for $10. And then yeah, fries, that's going to be extra. So I feel like
Hmm.
everything has gone up in the hospitality and service industry. Coffee hasn't, and it get that kind of circling back to the sig drink thing. I do think that the sig drink element does allow you to get better margins and a higher average
Hmm.
ticket, um, and that is a way that's different coffee shops are able to get more profit, is
Hmm.
having these signature drinks that you can sell for $7.50, $8,
Hmm.
and be able to make more money than selling, a
Mhm.
ton of 350 drips or, 450, $5 cold brews, whatever it is.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I don't know. It's interesting, but to answer your question, Allison, it is an industry wide thing that the hourly employees always like either age out or they find that one job, or that one operator who has a fantastic business and really really busy, typically fine dining. I've seen a lot of peers of mine go from barista world to fine dining,
Hmm.
or the bar industry, because
Yeah.
you learn so much being a barista. And you learn, I mean, it's repetition, it's a lot of interactions that it enables you when you go work at a fine dining restaurant or a bar, that translates very well. And those
Yeah.
types of jobs typically, like the upside, the ceiling of a fine dining or bartending job is much higher than the ceiling of a barista position.
Yeah.
And I mean, clearly there's exceptions to the rule. I'm sure there's crazy one-off coffee shops that the tips are, hundreds of dollars a day, but most shops are not that.
Hmm.
Yeah. Sounds like we should partner up and open a bar.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, I mean, yeah, a smarter version of me would have pivoted at some point and just gone the bar route. And who knows, maybe eventually I'll dip my toes into that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I do love. I'm an AM morning guy. I get
Hmm.
up at six
Mm,
a.m. now with the kids. So, but yeah, who knows?
yeah. Oh, Patrick, you're so knowledgeable, and I just really appreciate the way that you're able to articulate so clearly
Hmm.
all the different dynamics and of your own experience, but also of the industry. Um, and I just have kind of a fun question in that regard, since, maybe for both of you, going on 20 years. If you could quickly like land on what is some of the like weirdest trends in the coffee industry that have like come and gone?
Weirdest trends.
Like we used to make all our coffee in French presses.
Oh
That's
yeah. I
gone.
mean, French press is. I mean, you kind of nailed one of them. French press was like the holy grail for. Oh, or ooh, even the clover. The
Yeah.
clover was remember that was I don't even, I want to say it was like ten or $12,000 or something for
Uh-huh.
Yep.
clover, and that
Uh-huh.
was like going to be the savior for our industry. And then what, Starbucks bought it and squashed it. Or
Hmm.
I think I still see them around at certain Starbucks, but
Yeah.
um yeah, I mean, I would say right now it's all, there's a lot of technology that is getting thrown at the coffee industry, and they're trying
Hmm.
to figure out how to like close out the last few percentage points of quality. And I mean, it's admirable, but it's been funny. Like the Clover is a prime example of a lot of technology trying to make coffee better and faster and more repeatable. And you look back at it now, and it's kind of just bizarre, like what it was. And
Yeah.
I understand what they were going for, but I would say it's a fad that kind of goes up and down. Where I'm like, I feel like nobody's doing crazy technology stuff, and then all of a sudden, I mean, I'm one to speak because we use like kind of every bell and whistle at our disposal. But yeah, it's crazy to me. Some of the shops will really, they use every tool at their disposal to like perfectly distribute the coffee, perfectly tamp it. I mean, and like these things they do make the coffee taste better. A lot of them aren't applicable in a high volume shop. And
Mm.
so it's like, this is not a succinct answer for you, but it's just like, I think, yeah, it's the technology that keeps coming into the coffee industry, trying to figure out how to
Yeah.
make it better and more consistent. So I would say that trend has ebbed and flowed. Never has it really like died per se. What do
Right.
you got, Michael? What are you thinking?
For me, it was just mostly the going from the mounded coffee on your portafilter and then swiping off like 30 grams of coffee into the waste. And we thought that was like, it's art. It's like a painter, waste some paint. I remember that kind of trend. And then I remember the first time that we decided to stop doing that, and I think we saved like 30 grand by just not
Yeah.
doing the mound.
No,
Wow.
I definitely, the older I get, the more sensitive I am to waste,
Mm,
because when you understand like how many coffee cherries and how much work it took
mm,
to make like a shot's worth of coffee beans. And you're
mm-hmm.
just like, man, you need to like be real intentional with what you're messing with here, because, and like I'm so conflicted about latte art competitions because they're fantastic for the community and just very wasteful. And
Mm.
and so it's like my old man curmudgeon-y thing, where it's like but like, yeah, to your example, we wasted so many pounds, hundreds of
Mm-hmm.
pounds of coffee back then, and like silly mistakes. So I'm really
Yeah.
glad that the industry is where it is now, where everybody has these load cells built into their grinders,
Mm-hmm.
and like the espresso machine technology is so much better. So you're not seeing so many wasted shots,
Yeah.
or extra coffee dumped out,
Mm-hmm.
which is really cool to see. But yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
we didn't know what we were doing. So in our defense, 15, 18 years ago, there was none of that technology existed. Nobody was being
Yeah.
mindful of those
It's
things
a
in our
yeah, it's
world.
a baby industry. I mean,
Yeah.
everyone's like learning. Okay, I have one more fun question for both of you. What is the weirdest tasting note that you've ever encountered?
Oh, I'll go real quick
Ooh.
because like I remember, I don't know if we were there together. We were at Cuvée. We were trying an Indonesian coffee, and it tasted like diesel fuel. And what we came up with is it was probably because it was shipped somewhere and someone spilled some diesel fuel on the coffee.
Ew.
And yeah, it was like it
Oh.
was it was so gross. But so that's my weirdest tasting note.
Yeah, I'm gonna go weird good. Like you got the weird, you covered the weird bad, which,
Uh-huh.
yeah, for sure,
Yeah.
I would say is those like leathery
Mm.
components that you get in coffees in that region. But for me, like weird good is a lot of these co-fermented coffees,
Yes. Hmm.
and where it's like it smells and tastes like watermelons, or you know whatever weird fruit they put into it. So
Mm.
it's like that has been, I mean, the most pleasantly weird
Totally.
experience that I've had.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the only thing that like in most baristas have come across this at some point is potato defect, is
Mm.
like
What?
your Rwandans, and like when you don't catch it, or like maybe the barista served it to you and they didn't catch it, and then it tastes like you're drinking like potato coffee, a potato water. That is, I would
Oh.
say, yeah, one of the ones that most baristas have come up across at some point in their career, and is not. And that's a weird one for sure.
Mm.
I've never had that. It sounds disgusting.
Yeah. Do you like a
Well,
starchy potato? That's what it tastes like. It's just
Oh.
uncooked, just potato.
well, as we kind of wrap up here, I think there's one question I wanted to get to was what's it like being a dad? Oh, before this, we're gonna get your recommendation too here in a second, as far as it can be a life lesson or a place to eat or something that you just want to recommend to everyone. But first, I want to know like what it's been like being a father.
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, it
Yeah.
is the hardest and most rewarding thing I've ever done. It for me, it's crazy. I mean, there's probably something psychological that we're like hardwired this way, but it's like whenever the like leading up to actually the birth, it was like going through all the different scenarios in my head, and all that gets
Mm.
thrown out
Mm,
whenever you actually like see your kid. And for me, it's like, okay, shit just got real. and and just understanding that like, okay, I have to take care of you for the rest of my life.
mm,
And like, and but how excited I was to be in that situation. And
mm,
I mean, I'm very much, it's funny because my wife and I kind of have different perspectives on this, where I cannot wait for her to get old enough to like have a conversation with and go like
mm,
eat fun food and have experiences with. And she's very much like loving the baby phase, and
mm.
I'm just like, yeah, come on, let's go ahead and let's get past this baby phase, and let's get a little bit more interactive so we can go do some fun stuff.
Uh,
But yeah, it's just been awesome. It makes you realize like, okay, this is what life is about. Is about
mm,
like clearly people and friends, but then your own like creation, and then being like, oh
mm,
man, I'm gonna distill all these crazy lessons that I've learned and try and set you up for the most success. And I'm
mm.
sure that you will go off that path entirely at some point, but that's okay. And so I'm just excited to be along for the ride.
Mm, that's cool. I love it. Well, as far
Uh,
as we kind of like,
recommendation.
yeah,
Yeah, it could be
recommendations.
anything, like your favorite pair of socks, your favorite restaurant, favorite cocktail, favorite podcast, anything.
Oh man, so many.
Or something that you want to leave people, like as far as like something you've learned that you feel like other people should know.
I would say so. Favorite podcasts, like historically, I listen to music to like kind of calm myself,
Hmm.
and like jazz myself up when I'm in the car by myself or whatever it is. But like I got turned on to the Acquired podcast, and I think for
Hmm.
business owners, it's
Oh yeah.
been really cool to see. I want to say it started about 9 years ago or so. I want to say it was around like 2015, 2016. But I listened to the Howard Schultz one that was
Hmm.
like 3.5 hours long, and that was incredible. And then I jumped all the way back to the first one, and I've just been working through them chronologically. And it's been cool to see um, those two co-hosts kind of develop and grow and mature. But all the different CEOs and executives and hedge fund guys and just like all sorts of walks of life, them interviewing them, it gives me perspective on I'm not crazy or alone, and like the
Mm,
thoughts that I've had around business,
yeah.
because you see even some of the most successful business people in the world, they shared the exact same struggles that I had when I was
Hmm.
starting my tiny coffee shop, and seeing how they kind of thought through it and how they championed their causes and their businesses and came out on the other side of it. It is like that's been really helpful for me
Mm,
as I look to like, okay, what's next? How do I grow Fleet while still like maintaining what is like I am passionate about with Fleet in the coffee industry, while also looking at it as a business
mm,
and trying to enable that business to grow, to provide for other, salary positions, and allow other people to kind of like win alongside me. So
mm,
that's been really cool. So I would say that podcast, Acquired, is been my favorite podcast that I'll listen to in the last year. And I mean, maybe this one now
that's awesome.
will reign supreme. Um, and yeah, I mean, food is, I think I live to consume food. Like literally, like my wife, whenever it can be, like we're eating breakfast and I'm like, so what are we doing for dinner tonight? She's like, what? Like, what do you, yeah, like whenever we travel somewhere, it's like I have to map out exactly where we're eating, because
Mm,
I just love eating and drinking and things like that.
Mm.
So, favorite bite that I keep coming back to is the fish tacos from Este.
mm.
Este has the best fish tacos I've ever had, and
Wow.
my wife and I try and sneak by there and eat those as much as possible because it's just so stinking good. So,
Okay.
yeah, I would say that's been my favorite food that we've had. Really in the past like 6 months, a year.
Wow.
Okay.
Now I'm hungry.
Taking notes. Thank you. Oh,
Well, Patrick, thank you so much for coming on. Make Haste Slowly. That's so much respect to you and your journey. I've loved being in it with you. I love our conversations. It's just nice. I have a friend I can always go and talk business with and cry on your shoulder. And
Anytime.
it's been, I just really do appreciate you and just seeing what you do with Fleet and just how much you're respected in the coffee industry. And so I just want to tell you thank you for your friendship, and that I look forward to more and more years of that.
We really just love you, Patrick. Like, I'm going to say it in public. Just
And
really
I
love
love
you.
y'all as well.
It's
Yeah.
you,
Go way
just
back.
everything you do, I mean, it's so clear, like you're just so knowledgeable. And everything you do it with so much integrity. And
Yeah.
it's just so valuable, and you're just a really loyal, caring friend. And I am super grateful for y'all's relationship and all the ways that you guys have been able to support and encourage each other over the years. I just feel like this is a really lonely position to put yourself in, right? Leading these businesses and taking responsibility to create something and to invite other people into it that's trying to provide for people in a community. It's a beautiful and difficult and lonely work, and I'm so thankful for the support that you guys have been able to like offer each other over the years. We love you so much.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you
It's
came on this.
mutual.
Talk to
Yeah,
us.
absolutely. Thanks for having me. I mean, we didn't even talk about, Daydreamer and all the other
Oh,
crazy coffee things. So it's like, yeah, at some point we'll have to
part
maybe
Oh,
do
two.
yeah,
round
totally.
2 and chat about all that. Because I mean, that I'll just say that it definitely was lonely until I found like a good equity partner and a good business partner, with like David Connie being involved, and like that makes it so much easier. And you guys have each other, which is incredible. That because y'all have grown such an amazing company. And I know you guys have had some good mentors and investors over the years, and like that is the last little nugget is just like I'll leave people with is when you are looking to open a business, the people that you align yourself with and get into business with are just so crucial. And and that was something that I'm very thankful that my path crossed with my current business partner with David Connie, just because he's been a wealth of information and just like a good sounding board. And I mean that's really like what you need more than anything is just somebody that you're able to like talk through business with and try and like come to like a common place for customers and for employees and all those things. So just making sure that the future entrepreneurs are being mindful, because it's really at some point it'll be easy for people to give you money or to want equity, and you'll have to be selective about who it is that you partner up with, and be mindful, because that's a relationship that you can't really like redo, so to speak.
Yeah.
Totally.
Let's come back for part 2 with business relationships.
There you
Yes.
go.
Business
Yeah, all right.
partnership and relationship. I think that's a loaded conversation, actually. So
Yeah.
let's do it.
All right, I'm down.
Okay.
All right. Well,
All right.
thanks, Patrick, for coming
Thank
on.
you so
and,
much, Patrick.
Make Haste Slowly. Yeah.
Yep. Thanks,
Right.
guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.